a lot of the fast food companies, they will on purpose, I believe, put extra and undue emphasis on fitness activities so that it kind of distracts from how important or how vital the food aspect is. Balance and equilibrium and stillness and inward looking focus that you find in silent sitting is what runners find in running. Oh, everything natural is good. No, everything natural is not good.
The podcast you're about to watch was recorded outdoors in a park in Japan, Tokyo. Wanted to share some interesting tidbits about this video or the recording. The camera work, you will notice, was carried out in a handheld GoPro camera throughout, because the other camera, which was on a tripod, kept falling off because of strong breeze blowing in the park. So there's only one angle. Interesting fact is that you will notice the background has beautiful autumn foliage, okay, and we will have ravens also for company. But having said that, the content is so interesting with our guest, or we enjoyed the whole experience of recording the podcast. I'm sure you will also enjoy watching it. So let's begin. So Faraz is working with a luxury chain in the hospitality industry, and he is heading their wellness and spa division,
Yes,
correct?
for Japan.
For Japan,
Right.
yeah. And he's also a trained yoga teacher. He's trained in many other modalities in wellness and so many other branches of wellness. If you have to draw parallels between the approach yoga has, okay, because yoga is a big umbrella, but the approach towards spirituality or being mindful, and the Buddhist form of meditation, which is a vipassana also. So how would you, or rather what has been your experience in approaches to these two different approaches?
Sure. I can only share my experience.
Absolutely.
Because I know these are vast topics.
Absolutely.
And there are scholars who have much more detailed information on the comparative, etc. But in my experience of actually being a practitioner of these modalities, I find, first of all, like you said, yoga is an umbrella term. And there are so many different traditions, so many different systems within India. And because of accidents of history or because of the way things have happened over time, there are certain modalities which have become more popular, like the Yoga Sutras. Now, most people, when they think of yoga, think of the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, etc. I find, in my experience, mindfulness, the Buddhist style mindfulness, Vipassana style mindfulness, become aware of the breath, become aware of the body, emotions, etc., to be very handy and very much more straightforward path for most modern people. That's what I have found. It's much more accessible because and much more familiar to a lot of people that I work with. With yoga, with Hatha yoga especially, I think it's a very good process, but it needs a little bit of dedicated step-by-step consistent follow-up to be able to give some results.
Right.
Of course, there is this modern vinyasa yoga and fitness-based yoga, which is great. By the way, I don't criticize that. I think that's amazing. I do it myself, and it has its benefits. But traditional yoga, I find, needs a certain kind of mentoring and a certain kind of gradual progression, which is difficult to find these days. Mindfulness, to me, at the very basis of it, is just life itself. It's become aware of your breath, become aware of your body, become aware of your emotions, certain directions on how to do it. So that, to me, is so much more accessible. In my experience, to even people, when they do it, they're like, wow, I can do it anytime. Yoga, I think, at least the way we learn it now, it's a little bit of more of a preparation.
Get into a space, mat and stuff like that. This mindfulness-based meditation, we can just sit here and do it.
Also, the one way I think about it is that, let's say, it's like a thought experiment. Let's say I meet someone with whom I have nothing in common. No language, no culture, nothing. Let's say not an alien, but if a human being, I have very I cannot communicate at all.
Okay.
Which practice is so basic and so intrinsic that they can still do it, or I can still communicate. See, even if I meet you, I can easily indicate to you, this is your breath, become aware of your breath. Body, become aware.
Yeah.
So it is so natural. In fact, that's why there is a system in Japan, it's called Zazen.
Right.
Zazen, are you familiar with Zazen?
I've heard this term.
Yeah,
but I
so-
haven't- yeah.
Yeah. So the main practice is Zazen is simply sitting, just sitting. There are some instructions, but the basic principle is there's no instruction on what to do while you're sitting. And the idea is once you find that sitting, the breath awareness, body awareness, it will naturally come to you. No one has to teach it to you.
Right.
So I find it very attractive, this whole aspect of it being so intrinsic and so natural to just being a human being, that it's an extent, just any relaxed, connected, rooted human being will discover it.
Beautiful, isn't it?
And I find at least the practices of yoga, which doesn't mean they're good or bad, it just means they're different, will need a little bit more. That's why maybe we emphasize so much on the teacher and student and the system and tradition, because it does need a little bit guided channeling.
You meant the yoga.
The yoga.
Asanas and then
Asanas.
the step-by-step.
Like I don't know how will I on my own discover an asana or like a whole sequence.
Which is where people stumble on, right? I mean, they don't know how to do, what to do, and they keep doing something or the
Yeah.
other, and then they end up injuring, and then that's when the other.
And you know, there is a, like in Vipassana, in fact this is a story which is told in these Vipassana courses.
Okay.
There used to be a very famous great Vipassana teacher, and he was inspired by the story when he was young, inspired by the story of another great teacher.
Okay.
So he went to that teacher, and the teacher told him, okay, he said, give me your teaching. So he said, observe your breath. And that's it. That's the only teaching he got. No direction, how to, for how long, what will you, nothing, just observe your breath. But he was such a good student, and he was so sensitive, and he was already motivated. So he went back home for 1 year, he kept observing his breath, and he discovered many things. In fact, it's surprising how much you can discover just by being still and by observing your breath. It's always there for you, right? It's always there. You don't need any special direction. You don't need any special occasion. Anytime you want, you can go back to your breath. He did that for 7 years. Every year he used to go back. He used to get the same teaching. Observe your breath. Anyone else who was not such a good student would have given up. Like, tell me something else. Come on.
Yeah.
After 7 years, in the 8th year, he got this teaching. You can now start observing. So somehow, to me, even aesthetically, it pleases me that it's such a minimalist aesthetic.
Yeah.
That the teaching is so minimalist, yet it can really take you deep.
Right. But then, how do you explain this to somebody who's so uptight and
Yeah.
so absorbed in their materialistic world or their stress levels that they're like, what breath? What do I do? Because that is something that we experience even in yoga.
Right.
You have to hold an asana, and then people are looking around in the class. Okay, what am I to do now? Okay, stretch more. Touch the floor. Or touch the toe. Is that the agenda of doing an asana? So it's they know it at such a shallow level, and however much you explain them, it just doesn't cross their mind. So to such people, does this approach still work at some point of time?
No, of course. I mean, the pace at which someone will go and what will be recommended will depend on like the teachers will say they have to be a qualified student. Now, the traditional teachers, so they will kind of assess what kind of teaching works for whom. Like some people actually find this kind of rhythm in running. It's interesting. The same kind of balance and equilibrium and stillness and inward looking focus that you find in
runners,
in silent sitting is what runners find in running.
Yes.
Outwardly these are completely opposite practices, but actually it's the same thing.
Correct.
So some people find in dynamic movement stillness,
Yes.
and some people find very dynamic movements in stillness.
Yeah. The same thing many Ashtangis
Right.
experiment. when they are doing those AAP series or whatever. They're so zoned out while doing it. It's the same thing that they're doing, but
So I think the question should not be how can we teach a particular teaching to a particular person. The question should be what teaching or what knowledge is good for that
for
particular
that
person.
person. The teacher should be good enough to understand that and probably take the person through that.
And if, for example, let's say if I'm teaching a meditation workshop and I find that someone is coming there who is not ready for that, or who is not benefiting from at this stage in their life,
Yeah.
I should be able to recommend to them that maybe do something else, maybe do And there's nothing. First of all, there's no hierarchy.
You have organized a lot of retreats,
Yeah.
right, with international clients in Bali and in Japan. Yes.
Japan also, in Bali, India, yeah.
So, what has been your experience in terms of interacting with people coming from different countries, different cultures? Their approach or their openness to receive.
I think it's a bias selection because anyone who's anyway signing for a retreat, they are interested.
They are interested.
So
they need it.
it's not that I'm doing a survey and then I'm finding out. So people who come to these retreats, especially if they're traveling all the way, we used to do retreats in India. We used to get people from all over, Bali also.
Okay.
So yeah, they are interested. I try to avoid
differentiating,
thinking in terms of stereotypes.
Absolutely.
Because it's easy to fall into that. Like I mean, it's true. Like I learned basic Thai massage from a German couple, and they were very German. Like I learned it in Dubai, so they were like very systematic about it. And I have seen, I think more and more, the Asian approach is still the apprenticeship approach, which by the way has its great benefits also. It just needs a little bit more time, and it's more experiential, and it's more relationship based.
Okay.
So that's why the Guru Shishya Parampara is the apprenticeship approach.
Yes.
And even now, when you go to certain traditional teachers anywhere in Asia, they'll ask you to come, observe, start helping around, observe, start copying first. I find the Western approach a little more analytical and a little more, like we say, first results oriented and then process oriented. So the results come first. So they want to know what will I gain out of this workshop, what are the steps, how will I reach there, which I think is, I mean, if you have limited time and if this is not your main priority in life, if you have other things to do, which makes sense. If you're going to take out 1 week or 10 days out of your life and you want to learn a skill, you want to know what will I get into, how qualified is the teacher, etc. I think the apprenticeship approach is very useful if you want to make it like a longer commitment or your life's work. Then it really helps to really stay with the teachers. You really experientially see what's happening, how they're dealing. That's invaluable. So for these workshops, I think, for when we deal with people who come from the West, we just have to be very clear and detail oriented and what to expect, how to do, when to do, etc., etc. Which has its benefits, but yeah, for something like these arts, they have to be ideally, they have to be savored. Instead of doing like a 200-hour or 500-hour training where all these hours are concentrated in 1 month or 1.5 months, just the weekend programs will be great. To run a program in a city where you accumulate 200 hours, but over 6 months or over 1 year. Many do that. But I think that's so much more beneficial because then you get time to practice and you can see changes in your life over time.
And also in these retreats, you have sort of brought in the sattvic food approach, balanced food approach. So, when did you realize that this is equally important?
I think from my own personal experience also, like if you see how food and your weight and overall it affects your alertness and it affects your overall well-being. But also thankfully now more and more there is more awareness. People are talking about it. And if you want to be serious about your health and well-being, food is the central aspect. In fact, something you were talking about just before starting this is that a lot of the fast food companies, they will on purpose, I believe, put extra and undue emphasis on fitness activities so that it kind of
Okay.
distracts from how important or how vital the food aspect is. A lot of fast food companies will sponsor marathons or be active, go out, which is great. Being active and going out is amazing.
Yeah.
But if your food is not right, then it cannot be replaced. Also, anything which is packaged has been packaged with an intention.
Right.
So social media is packaged, packaged food is packaged, and even professionally you can see our relationships are packaged. Intention doesn't always have to be bad. Sometimes you have to understand packaging has a certain intention, and a lot of the time the intention when it comes to social media or when it comes to packaged food is to have you come back, is to have you get addicted, right? So one thing where you have to, even when you enter a chain supermarket, not your corner shop, but a proper chain supermarket, there are professionals with MBAs like me who do visual merchandising.
Yeah, yeah.
They know, I mean, you will know
Placements
this,
and all of that. Yeah,
which
yeah,
eye
absolutely.
level below, first, second, third
Yeah,
fragrance.
yeah, yeah.
So we have to realize a lot of our interactions in modern life are not neutral. They are already loaded with intention. So you don't, I don't realize why did I shop so much? No, that was intended.
Intended.
I don't realize why do I, overeat chips and don't overeat apples. There's an intention there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Already triggering amygdala.
yes,
Oh, shop.
and there's already a lot of salt, there's a lot of sugar, there's a lot of fat, there's a lot of visually they've been placed and everything. So all, I think that's why we need to be conscious about our ahar, because a lot of, more than before, a lot of packaged ahar is coming to us. Packaged psychologically, packaged social media, packaged relationship, packaged food. So you have to be aware and with conscious intention go and consume. So this was the overall, but generally speaking, for example, a lot of people these days struggle with weight issues. And it's a known fact that if you just want to lose fat, I mean, of course, exercise is amazing and you should do that. It's great for health and well-being and longevity and your quality of life. It's great. But if you just want to lose fat, you can do zero exercise and just eat less and you will lose fat. Zero. Because it's all about calorie in, calorie out.
Yeah.
And so I think diet has a very important role to play in our general life, especially you're talking about retreats,
yeah.
like when we go for Vipassana. Now, this is an example of some people who have been doing a certain kind of retreat for a long time, so they have perfected it. So we only get breakfast and lunch, we don't get dinner, especially if you're an old student, at least you're going back. And we feel great because we are spending 10 hours a day meditating anyway. So different types of lifestyles will require different retreats formats will require different type of diet. Like if I'm working in the corporate world now, of course I need Rajasic food also. I cannot be completely sattvic, because my work involves being full of energy and being precise and being aggressive in a way. Sometimes you meet the goals, which is great.
Yeah.
So the diet also has to match your lifestyle and your goals.
Yeah. So it must have been interesting though to bring in the food aspect and exposing people to that element as well. Because in my experience, people when they go through that is when they realize, oh, we can do without eating so much. We can do with even a little bit of meal.
A lot of our food related habits are not based on hunger. Or you can say, like when we expanded the definition of ahar, it is based on hunger, but it's based on psychological hunger. So you have a certain psychological hunger. Like for most of us, when we work at the office, when you come back home, we are restless because we have been kind of suppressing or redirecting our emotions, which is required if you work in a certain setting. And then you want to release. So just either there's a hunger, there is an unfulfilled aspect. So either you go on social media or you unconsciously start eating. Or you just zone out in front of the TV, which are all genuine needs, but they are being met in not so efficient ways. So I find we should not blame think we should not blame the intention. Because the intention is good. The intention is how can I feel more satisfied. You just
Your
need
personal intention, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But the way we are trying to fulfill it is not very healthy. We can just find healthier ways.
Yes, absolutely. If we be mindful, if we practice that, then all those aspects are taken care of naturally.
That's why this whole aspect of not being just being very strict with yourself, etc. For me, uh, you have to be very clear where the intention is coming from. Discipline can also be very caring, but you have to know why you're doing it. It shouldn't become masochistic. It should become okay. It has to be done. That's how life is. Life is hard. If you don't do it, not like
And
that.
it's going to completely rebound
Yeah.
that approach. Yeah. Okay. My another point I'm very curious about is that Bali was a completely different setup, right? The country, the feel. I guess the place itself is so calming.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot more nature. It's tropical. Yeah, I was working in a resort. Here, I work in the city.
So, what are your observations? And I think in Bali, mostly people would come to relax on a vacation or a retreat approach or so.
Yeah.
Here, you're dealing with city people who are already into corporate life.
Sure.
So, how is the mental health balance being experienced here? Are people open to receiving it? Because here, I guess there's a lot of spirituality as well. But at the same time, we see a lot of people in the other end.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's it that
What I would say, glamorizing or having a very ideal picture of
a city life?
no city, but also places like Bali or it's nature. People are all. It's almost very patronizing. We say these people they live in nature, even though you see there is no modern facilities. Sometimes there's a lot of poverty, etc., etc. They are so much happy. So that's sometimes a tendency. Yeah. But overall, I understand what you mean. There's definitely much more rootedness. There's much more. There's a lot of traditional rituals which people follow, which make them feel much more connected to nature, and they have their own set of problems, which are equally difficult. So just because they are closer to tropical and nature,
doesn't mean.
and as a tourist, if you see, wow, I feel so relaxed because you don't live here. Okay? But yeah, but for the guests, as you say, people who come on a holiday, of course, they are in a different mindset. They're completely relaxed. They're more. They're looking at a different kind of immersion with nature, with culture, different kind of conversations. Sure. I found retreat is great, and it's a great time to really go deep and get in touch with a place which is sometimes difficult to get in touch with. But again, it can go overboard, and then it can become a bit unrealistic and out of touch with reality. So I found for me this is a great balance. So now I come to the city, where what I find that it kind of counterbalances that. We're dealing with people who on a daily basis are dealing with work, with family. So, sometimes in retreat it's easy to feel good and then you go back and then you're back to the same.
Back to square one. Yeah.
So in a city like Tokyo, if it's not working, you will know. They will tell you. Because you learned something and then I went back to the family at home. And then they were like, well, it doesn't work. And retreats have great benefits because sometimes it's just not possible for you to get in touch with that part of you when you're in this cycle all the time. So by all means, go for retreats, and I go myself. But sometimes what can happen is in retreat you can learn some things which some. It's easy to give someone an experience. I find it's very easy. Do fast breathing, you'll have an experience. But it's more difficult. It's more to give you a sustainable practice.
Right.
So if you come on a retreat, I can advertise it. I can say I'm going to give you a great experience, and you will have an experience. You will feel lightheaded. You will feel relaxed, different. Wow. But will it translate to your life? Maybe, maybe not. So in city, I find it's more grounding. It kind of it shows you what's working, what's not working, and so that's the difference I find. The kind of practices which you give people are practices which they can immediately incorporate in their lives. Then let's say if you're someone who has interest, who finds benefits, you may think, oh, I want to start jogging. Then maybe you need to get proper shoes. Maybe find a friend who jogs. Find the right time. So a little bit of a few careful. Be a little bit careful about a few things that comes in now. Jog. Most people will stop at that, and that's great. It works for them. Some of them, because of their natural inclination or their interest or motivation, or because their friends are doing it, they want to, let's say, run a half marathon. Then you do need to watch your diet, exercise a little bit, maybe join a gym, not with a specialized trainer, but just with your friends. Start doing short runs, a little bit of preparation. So let's say now if someone wants to run a proper marathon and their life is revolving around, this theme, I'm a runner. So you need to get a coach, you need to, really join a team maybe and watch your diet, and it starts affecting the structure of your life. So it's not just benefiting your life, you're orienting your life around. And then there are some people who are professional athletes. That's their job. They train for it. They go to academies. They measure themselves. They check, etc. And out of the professional athletes, we get some people who do nationals, international, and they're top champions. So, like I was saying, Buddha is like the Usain Bolt, the number one top Gautam Buddha of meditation. So he was the champ. He had the natural gift. He went to the best teachers. He wasn't satisfied. He just went till the end, which is great. We need people like that to show us what is possible. Because you don't know what is possible till the time you really go to the ends of what could be possible, right? But in this case, for most people, it's easy to see the difference. But let's see the parallel meditation. Most people don't see the difference there. Like if the parallel with walking is like silent sitting. If you just want to talk tomorrow, if you want me to recommend a practice that anybody can do without any supervision, is sitting silently half an hour every morning. Go for it. Sit whichever way you want. Sitting is important because lying down you'll sleep probably. If you want to do some stretches so that you're able to sit fine, that's common sense. Or sit on a chair. That's it. And it's going to have amazing benefits. That's the basis of Zazen, which is the Japanese practice. And I love the Japanese are really great with minimalism. They really want to. Aesthetic is minimalist. Even the Zazen meditation aesthetic is very minimalist. Like there cannot be anything more minimal than just sitting silently. Like what will you do? Just exist.
Yeah.
And then above that, if you start jogging, which means if you start maybe dedicating a little more time and a little more method to it, maybe you learn some technique. Do it a couple of times a week. No problem. Maybe find a friend, have a sitting group, etc. I'll compare the half marathons to monthly retreats. Maybe go for a retreat, stay for a weekend, etc. So then you do need to, watch your diet, get some instruction, see if that practice suits your lifestyle. There are certain kind of meditations which do not suit you. Because there are certain meditations which were done by full-time residential monks because it was part of their research work.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what monks were meditation athletes and meditation researchers. That's what they were doing. They were researching on their own psyche and becoming extremely sensitive and to see what they can find. But if you go on a weekend retreat and become extremely sensitive and then suddenly come back next day without any practices learning how to make boundaries, then it's harmful. It's not even less useful, it's harmful. If you do that, you really need to find a teacher and a tradition and a practice and diet and routine and when you're waking up, when you're sleeping. Because you cannot suddenly start meditating 1 hour every day without it affecting other parts of your life, and you have to really understand what kind of meditation. And then out of those, there are some people who want to do it full time, who want to be teachers, who want to be regular full time on retreat for a few years, and that's great. You should do that. But so both the example of like male monks and female practitioners, and this example means that I think we need to be a little more thoughtful and a little more intentional about the practices that we're doing and how we are doing it. And just like it's very easy for people to say, "Oh, everything natural is good." No, everything natural is not good. Nature has so many bad things. Nature is violent. Nature is unfair. And nature, you go in the jungle, you won't survive for a day. So everything natural is not good. You have to understand how nature can be adapted to make it. Like Ayurveda is based on nature, but nature is not full of rasa, all these potions. They adapt nature, synthesize it, and use it in a very specific way to benefit your health. So everything natural is not naturally good. Oh, but this is chemical and this is natural. I understand, but it's a more nuanced conversation. So meditation is good. Oh, yes, it is good. But you have to see, does it fit in your life, and what style of meditation or yoga practice you want to do, what affects how much time you're spending. And I think the best way is to just start with the basic, like start with walking, start with silent sitting. And in certain places in Japan, that's the full practice. They don't teach you anything, just sit silent. And of course, there are peripheral practices. If you sit, you have to stretch a little bit, you have to know how to hold yourself straight, fine. But the practice is only sitting silently, and that's what people do their whole life. And initially, it means you have to dabble a little. Unless you experience something, you can't really know if it works for you or not. So it's like dating. Right? You have to dabble a little bit before you find out.
Another analogy. Lovely. You're full of examples.
because patterns are there everywhere. It's the same pattern everywhere. And then once you commit, then you get married to a practice.
On that note, we would end our podcast.
Getting married to a practice.
And we can talk so much more.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll
Part
get back
two.
again. Yeah, we'll do part 2 on this. So, thank you so much,
Thank
Faraz.
you.
Thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.